Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host, your friend, your coach. Today, I have another great friend of mine that I met to my podcast and to my favorite community online, the Serving Circle, Alyson Williams from Australia, Canberra. We connected, as I said, to the Serving Circle. We had a chat a few weeks ago. Sorry, actually, 2 years ago, we first connected around the same time. And then life got in the way. We both got busy. And finally, we reconnected just a few weeks ago. And we had a beautiful chat yesterday. And I said, you know what, Alyson, let's not waste any time. Let's do it right away. Let's do the podcast the next day. And here we are. So a little bit about her. She has an incredible story. I mean, I only, guys, I've been spoiling you guys, bringing not only just amazing people with incredible stories, but goosebump-inducing stories. And she's one of those. So a little bit about her. She's the self-love alchemist. She loves helping people to learn to self-love themselves. And her superpower is to literally help identify and see the superpower in others, something that also I love doing as well. And she used to be a teacher, been a mentor for a long time. And back in 2013, her world literally crumbled around her. She she had to leave her job and move from another position to another department within the government that she was working in. And then her marriage fell apart. And at the same time, her mother passed away, and she also had a mini stroke. All of that in a matter of 6 months. And yeah, we're gonna unpack all of that today. And then she started a coaching career in 2017, and she's been doing a lot of great stuff out there and impacting people in a good way. So, Alyson, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Payman. My pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. I've just had 3 amazing meetings with wonderful people. So what's not to love?
Exactly. Love that. Love that. So, we're going to talk about your business and all that good stuff in a moment. But first, for people who don't know you, tell us, who's Alyson as a human being and as a woman?
Right. So firstly and foremost, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and I grew up in a large family. So I love having lots of people around me. I'm a big chatterbox. And, I was very blessed to have parents who really did their best. I don't think all parents do their best by their kids, but I was very blessed to have parents who are reasonably well adjusted. I grew up in a middle class family where there was love, there was connection, there was always food on the table, all that sort of stuff. So all the material goods were provided without any trouble, and also the emotional goods were provided. And I've come to realize later on in my life, particularly through my coaching, that not everybody has had the benefit of having a loving, caring family
Mhm.
or parents who lifted them up instead of dragged them down. So that's kind of my basis for really valuing, what I've had in my life. And I'm still very close to all my siblings and all their children and all of those things. So family to me is very important. I've been blessed to have 2 children of my own. They're both adults now, so they don't live with me, but we are very close. So for me, family is what I'm all about. Now, ethnically, I'm what's known as an Anglo-Indian. And that is important to me because that's part of my identity and my heritage. So Anglo-Indian is actually a culture. So I was born in India, in Calcutta, came to Australia when I was 12.
Oh,
And an
wow.
Anglo-Indian is someone who has both British and Indian
Mm.
heritage. But it's not like an English man marries an Indian woman and you're an Anglo-Indian. No, that is actually a culture. We have our own traditions, our own ways of doing things. So that's very much part of who I am, how I was brought up, and very much, how I feel. And that's something I have passed on to my kids, but it's a little bit diluted because their dad is not an Anglo-Indian. But again, it's all a part of, who I am. So tradition, culture, family is
Mhm.
super important to me because those have been the parts of my life that have made me proud of who I am. They've given me grounding, and they've helped me to be kind of to sort of have a launch pad for what I do in the world. And the reason I do self-love is I talk about empowerment through self-love, because when you feel good about yourself, it shows. It shows in the way you treat people.
Mhm.
It shows in the way you allow people to treat you. Because people can only treat you badly with your agreement, right? As I say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So
Yes.
that's again very much part of my philosophy, which thanks to my mother, I learned early in life.
Wow.
So I
Love
used to
that.
say, yeah, I became a teacher, and then that's where I met my husband, now ex-husband. We then moved from Melbourne to Canberra. This is where I had my children. I love Canberra. It's a government town, so it's kind of quite sterile in some ways, but it's a really lovely place to bring up children. And now that I'm retired, it's a nice place to be retired. So there's no hustle and bustle of, big city life, etc. And now that I'm a coach, I just love, helping people to rediscover what I call their magnificence, because I believe we are all magnificent. But so many people have had so much stuff thrown at them. It's almost like a diamond that's had a lot of rubbish thrown on it. And all you can see now is the outside crud and the crust. But when we start chiseling away at all the rubbish on the outside, you get to see the beautiful gem inside. And that's what I feel I do when I'm a coach.
Beautiful. Love that. Wow. What a path. What a story. We can unpack all of that in a moment. First of all, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you. Ready?
Yeah.
So, Alison, what makes you happy?
Being with people I love, particularly my family.
Beautiful. What makes you smile?
What makes me smile?
Hmm.
Pretty much anything that, I think, life is what you make it. And so I find joy in little things. And in
Yeah.
fact, I've got a bit of a weird sense of humor. So I'll smile at things that other people probably think, what are you laughing at or what are you smiling at? So the simple joys of life make me smile.
Hmm. Love that.
Yeah.
Now, let's take the happiness factors a couple of notches higher. What makes your heart sing? What sets your soul on fire?
Oh, my heart sings when I can see, oh, I'm getting goosebumps, when I can see that people are absolutely blooming and blossoming in front of me, that, they've come from, that they are now, they can see the sparkle of the diamond underneath all that crud. And when they're willing to own that they are magnificent and they want to really step into that,
Mhm.
that's what really makes my heart sing. And as I was just saying in one of the calls I had this morning, I don't feel that I do it. I've got skills, I've got strategies, I've got talents, I've got gifts. I absolutely acknowledge that. But I can't make the person do the work. I
Yes.
can't change how they think. I
Uh-huh.
can only provide them with the tools. What happens after that is up to them. So when someone says to me, "Oh, thank you, Alison, you've changed my life," I say, "Well, actually, no, I haven't. I just helped you along the way. You
Yes.
changed your You change your life with the decisions you made. You change your life with the way you now think differently and you behave differently. I've just been lucky enough to accompany you on the journey. That
Absolutely.
makes my
Just like the saying, can take a horse to the water, but you cannot drink for the horse.
totally,
If someone
totally.
wants to go to the gym, you can take them to the gym, but you can't do the exercises for them. The same thing. Absolutely. Love that. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
Uh, Respect is one of my core beliefs, probably my highest belief. And when people are disrespected, not only I just don't tolerate disrespect anymore. I'll be very polite and say, excuse me, payment. I don't appreciate the way you just spoke to me. Can we try again? So I don't, but living by my values and my boundaries are very strong in me. But what really makes me sad is when there are other people who are disrespected and they don't know how to stand up for themselves. So one of the things, with my mum is that she brought us up to stand up for what we believe in, to fight for the little person, because there's so many people who don't either have the courage, the confidence, or even the verbal skills to be able to stand up for themselves.
Yeah,
And I have done that all my life. And that really makes me sad when people are disrespected. Uh, yeah.
I'm
What
with you.
makes me angry? That kind of makes me angry as well. Because I actually don't live in a lot of anger. I'm not an angry person. Um, because I think, I choose how I want to feel. And
Mhm.
anger is not somewhere I want to live. But I will definitely, it might make me angry to the point of sort of doing something about it, but I won't sit in that. Because if I can't change it, there's no point, making a big deal about it.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. I'm with you. Now, What scares you?
Honestly, being destitute.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I know you've experienced, homelessness and all that sort of stuff. That absolutely scares the life out of me. The other thing that scares me is going to prison. Because I'm a bit of a coward. I don't think I'd be able to cope if I was in jail. Um, so I, for the most part, there's no reason I should end up in there.
Yeah.
Unless someone killed one of my kids or something, but I can't see that happening.
Knock
Praise
on
Lord.
wood. Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, being destitute and being homeless and being chucked out on the street, that scares me.
Absolutely. I wasn't on the street technically, but if it wasn't for a friend of mine, I would have been, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hear you. Now, what is your number one personal superpower?
Excuse me. Well, I think I have two superpowers. Writing is one of my talents, and I'm a very
Mm.
good writer. And people actually say, like, even if I do a Facebook post or whatever, oh wow, that was amazing. You're such a good writer. But that's secondary because what is my real superpower, as I said to you yesterday, and you mentioned, is I can see in people the beauty and the gifts and the talents that they can't see in themselves. And partly as a society, we're so entrenched in not standing out in the crowd, not saying, look at me, how awesome I am. We've been taught to say that that's conceited or that's being boastful, and all of that
Mm.
is so much of that is just so. And I think a lot of that comes from, from our religion or from our institutions that want to keep us down. So I lost train of thought. So I actually feel that being able to tell someone you are amazing and help them on that journey is what really is my superpower. And it can take a long time. And that's why when you work sort of one-on-one, and this is not a pitch, but when you work one-on-one with the person closely, you get to know them so that you can actually see, what makes them tick, what their challenges are, how to move them on. So, I even do pro bono work with people because they have a need. There's nobody else in their lives.
Yeah.
There was one, client I had who, she was just abandoned. She had three kids. She had a mother and a sister. She had a partner, but he wasn't very respectful. She had no one in her life other than her therapist and me who were there for her completely. No one who told her that, she could do it. No one who told her that, yes, she was human, she would fall, but as long as she got up again, that was fine. So, being there for someone like that and getting her to see that even with all this stuff that had happened in her life, she is beautiful and worthwhile, that she deserves to have a beautiful life. So, working with that is really the stuff that makes my heart sing. And that is the superpower that I have. I'm grateful for.
I love that. Love that. Thank you for sharing. What is one thing that you used to value that you don't value anymore?
Um, this isn't necessarily, I don't think, answering the question, but I used to be very judgmental and very kind of harsh. And this is obviously when I was much younger, but I think it also carried on probably till it all changed. I think, after my divorce, etc., when I had a good heart look at myself. And that was basically that just because I was able to make an assessment of something, because I'm quite an analytical person, that it's not all, if it doesn't come with compassion, then, it can be quite destructive. Now, I'm not sure if that actually answers your question, but
Yeah.
so I used to value kind of being honest and, you know, sort of saying what I believe and saying what I feel. And I used to do it without enough compassion. It was more intellectual than spiritual, let's say. So now I found forgiveness in the most weird way.
Mhm.
But now that I found forgiveness, including for myself, I've
Mhm.
also found, and I find that now I'm able to sort of be not so much judgmental, but analytical, if you like, and compassionate. And that gives it a whole different complexion. It gives it a whole different picture, a whole different outcome. I'm a big
Absolutely.
believer in win-win.
Absolutely. Love that. Now, conversely, what is one thing that you did not value, but now you're valuing more and more?
Well, forgiveness, actually.
Mm.
I did not understand the power of forgiveness. I was sort of brought up Catholic, and so it was like, you'd go to confession every week because you were supposed to, and you'd confess your sins. And I didn't know as a little girl of 6 or 7 what I was supposed to confess. And then you'd go and do penance, and then you got forgiveness. And I don't think, to me, sort of forgiveness was more a construct that was kind of out there. It wasn't sort of something that I felt in my life. Um, but as I said, pretty much through my whole marriage breakdown experience, the divorce experience, I've come to realize just how powerful forgiveness is. And I've now seen that even in my clients, that how important forgiveness is. And the hardest thing is to forgive yourself sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you like traveling, don't you?
I do.
I'm going to take you down different type of traveling, down memory line.
Yeah.
Remember when we were kids growing up, people around us, family, relatives, teachers, neighbors, always ask us, hey, Alyson, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer to that as a little girl?
It's quite funny. So the eldest child in my family is my sister, and
Mm.
she's like 12 years older than me. So, I was 5 and she was 17, much to her chagrin. But she was training to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and so I used to say, and I was in a Catholic school, so I wanted to be a nun, God forbid. Um, so, I'd want to be, and I wanted to be a nun who was a nurse so I could work with my sister who was a doctor. But that was never going to be a good match. But so I used to want to be a nun who was going to be a nurse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, growing up, what was your relationship with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
I loved school. I became a teacher because I loved school. In fact,
Mm.
when I finished high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something like, be interior decorator or whatever. But
Mm.
this was in the 70s, late 70s, because yes, I'm a bit old. And I had no idea as to how I would get a job in those days, because in those days you sort of went to school and college to get a job. And so I had no idea what to do. So I thought, you know what? I love school because I go there to have fun with my friends, which I do. I was lucky enough to get good grades at school. So I decided, you know what, maybe I'll just become a teacher. My mum was also a teacher. So when I obviously having spent most of my life in school, it was a complete known scenario. So, I became a teacher because I couldn't think of anything else to do.
Beautiful, beautiful. What was your favorite subject at school?
English.
Mm. And your least favorite?
Well, I did my primary school years in India, so you had to learn a second language. And in fact, we learned two second languages. So you learned Hindi, which in North America, in North India is the language that most of North India speaks. And then you learned the state language, which was Bengali. And Bengali is a beautiful language. It's kind of like Latin. It's very classical. It's very lyrical, but it's so hard. It was the bane of my life. So that was my least favorite subject. Because in India in those days, and I don't know if it's changed, you were rank ordered in the class from 1 to 33, and there were usually 33 kids tops in the class. And from grade 3 onwards, you had exams 3 times a year. And you would pass or fail depending on your results. And if you failed twice in a row, you'd be chucked out of the school, you'd be expelled, which
Wow.
was a real kind of, shameful kind of thing to have happen.
The family, yeah. Mm.
Bengali was my least favorite subject because I was so bad. My mum and dad even paid for private tuition with the Bengali teacher after school. I was still terrible at it. Yeah, and in high school, I don't know what probably
Mm.
physical education, because when I was growing up in Australia, in India, in a very kind of little convent, actually it was Australian, it was the convent run by Australian nuns. We didn't have fancy grounds or anything like that. So we didn't have a gymnasium and we didn't do kind of sports to that great extent. So we played something like, like volleyball. That was about it. We do running races and all that kind of stuff. When I came to Australia, all the kids in primary school, they learned how to swim, they learned how to play netball. Netball was a big thing in schools. Whereas in India, we learned basketball, but only at year 7. And when I came to Australia, I had finished year 6. I was about to go to year 7. So I hadn't learned basketball. So I had no kind of transferable skills. I didn't know how to do any gym work. I couldn't do somersaults or jump over a horse or any of that kind of stuff. So I wasn't very good with phys ed. So phys ed became my least favorite subject.
So what was it in the Bengali language that made it so hard for you?
Bengali.
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing is, Hindi is very much the same kind of language we spoke to the servants,
Uh-huh.
whereas when Bengali, the whole vocabulary was different.
Uh-huh.
The um, the alphabet was kind of different in that it had blends, and so when the blends, the blends had a whole different kind of I think of the word symbol. And so that made it difficult as well. And, to be honest, probably was also my mindset. When as a kid, you don't think about mindset, but I'm pretty sure that was it as well. That I kind of thought Hindi was easier because we kind of spoke the same sort of thing to the servants and shopkeepers and stuff, whereas Bengali was quite different and we didn't speak it at all. So, yeah.
So do both of these languages use the same characters alphabet?
No, they're quite different. They have the same, they both have about the same number of letters. So consonants and vowels may be about the same. And there's similar sort of characteristics in how you represent the vowels. But other than that, no, there wasn't a whole lot of similarity.
How many characters are there in Hindi and in Bengali?
In Hindi and they probably both have about, a long time now, maybe about 50 letters or
Wow.
consonants, for want of a better word. About 50 consonants and probably about 15 to 20 vowels.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is.
Wow. And we
Especially
compare
when you're learning two sets.
to what, sorry?
Two sets, because they're two different
yeah.
languages with two different, yeah.
Wow. And we complain that we have what, 27, 28 and the Western
Yeah.
alphabet. Yeah, wow. Amazing, amazing. So imagine that we were in the same class in grade 10, 11.
Mhm.
What kind of student and girl were you back then? Were you the shy one, the nerd one, the quiet one, the chatterbox, the superstar? What were you?
I've never been quiet my whole life, Payment. So 10 and 11, yes, so I was very much my own person. I was always quite confident.
Mhm.
I was
Mm.
I wasn't necessarily one of the cool kids, but I wasn't one of the nerds either. So I was in that happy kind of level, if you like, that you have in schools, where I
Mhm.
was probably, a cool kid who wasn't the coolest kid kind of stuff. So I had lots of friends, both the boys and the girls. I was in a co-ed school. We had lots of good times in terms of I was always a bit naughty. So I'd always kind of, bait the teachers or, be a bit of a smart aleck. I've always had a smart aleck tongue on me. So, I love school. And that was why, again, I wanted to sort of, be a teacher because even at high school, I loved school. So I don't know that I wasn't, I guess you'd say I was popular, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, everybody wants to be my friend popular. But I had a lot of friends. Yeah,
Oh,
as well regarded.
yeah. Uh, when you were in school, were you popular with the boys?
At various times, yes.
Okay. Which times were you popular?
Well, when I say various times, but look, I don't know. Um, I'm getting all shy now. Yeah, I think I was popular with the boys, but as I said, not to the point like everybody wanted to go out with me.
Mm.
But I certainly had enough admirers among the boys.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Do you remember what was your very first job and how much you get paid the first time you worked?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was rightly or wrongly, I think in a way wrongly. So my parents were very much, because more my friends had, well, a lot of my friends had, part-time jobs and things. My parents were, your job is to go to school and be a good student. I actually wasn't a good student. I was a lazy student. Because I got by without having to do a lot of work. I was lucky
Yeah.
that way. So anyway, when I was about in the year 12, my friend of mine was working for McDonald's. McDonald's had just come to Australia a few years before that.
Mm.
And I wanted to go and get a part-time job just because I wanted the experience of, having a job. I was lucky that money wasn't an issue as well. So I used to get pocket money, whatever I needed. Um, but I just wanted to have the experience of the job. So I then signed up and worked at McDonald's. And because in Australia, you can only work, children can only be employed from age 15. And once they turn 18, then they have to be paid an adult wage.
Mm.
So I was probably about 17 when I was working at McDonald's. And it was a bit of fun. It was the old days McDonald's still did chicken, so they'd have these huge chicken sort of cookers, which was full of oil, and then you'd have to sort of clean the chicken, put it in the breadcrumbs, and then fry it. And that was okay. But cleaning the chicken was pretty awful, but cleaning the chicken cookers was even worse. Thankfully, I never had that job. So I worked on the chicken and in the back room. I worked on the chips where you'd have to make the fries. The boys used to be the only ones on the grill, very sexist. I worked on what was called the window where you serve people. So I
Yeah.
did all sorts of jobs. And I don't know how much they paid us, maybe, I don't know, $5 or $7 an hour. And I used to really love McDonald's, and I still do, even though it's not necessarily healthy for you. And depending on how many hours you worked, you'd get an allowance for food. So if you
Mm.
worked 3 hours, you'd get like $1.20 worth of food. And in those days, I don't know if fries were $1.20, whatever. You'd get $1.20 worth of food like for 3 hours. And then depending on how many hours you worked, you'd get more allowance for food. So that was fun.
How much was
But that
a
was,
Big Mac combo back then?
I can't remember. Can't remember. We're talking nearly 50 years ago.
Oh yeah, wow. Mm. Yeah, I remember when we first moved to Canada, um, in 95, it was like $5, $6. Last time I checked when I was back in Canada in October of last year, just out of curiosity, I went. It was $18 before tax with no cheese. With cheese, $20 plus tax.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know, that's Canada for you.
Well,
Uh,
I don't think it's only Canada, to be honest.
is it the same in Australia as well? Price going completely crazy?
It is, but luckily we don't have tax on food.
Okay, yeah.
So we all only brought in our GST, our goods and services tax, pardon me, about maybe 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And food is definitely not taxed because otherwise, you know, poor people kind of find it harder
Oh,
to
okay.
feed their kids.
That's a
So
great.
it's mainly, yeah, and they were also looking to keep, and I don't know whether books are taxed either because, education is something that should be accessible to all people. So there are some pretty strict rules about tax on food, particularly. So, and that's what I love. One of the things I don't like about North America is you go to buy something, it says, oh, $9.50. You go to pay $9.50. Oh, hang on, there's tax.
Yeah,
So it's like $12.30, whatever. Maybe not so bad, but
yeah.
so whereas in Australia, even though we have GST, it's all rolled into the price. So the price on the tag is the price you pay.
That makes so much more sense because in Canada we have tax on everything, even on food. And depending on the
Yeah.
province, for example, in Ontario, you pay GST plus PST, which is provincial sales tax, and then you
Yeah,
have the federal tax and then the and all so many taxes. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
it is. And that's what I was going to say, because again, and I know that even in the US that they have sort of some states tax things and some don't, where it's really,
Yeah.
really confusing, not only for the resident, but even for the visitor, right?
Oh yeah. It always takes some time to readjust, even when I go back to Canada for visiting. That the price on the price tag, that's not the final price. You have to add an extra 15%.
Yeah.
So wow. Let's move on. Let's talk about your path. How would you describe your path from the moment you left school to now? Would you say it was pretty much straightforward, smooth sailing? Once you get into one lane, you were set for life? Or is it more like turns and twists, like a roller coaster?
More turns and twists than a roller coaster, happily.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been lucky that things have just always landed in my lap. And I had a girlfriend who was very, God rest her soul now, she's passed sadly. She also was a few years older than me, and she didn't have a very good relationship with her mother, and that created a lot of friction in her life. And anyway, so as I said, I got into teaching because I couldn't think of anything else to do. Now, coincidentally, at the end of school, my high school, when I was about to go to teachers college, my sister wanted to go traveling overseas. And the friend she was going to travel with, she changed her mind. So my sister's plans fell through. So my sister said to me, why don't you come along? I'll pay for your fare. Mum and dad can just pay, incidentals and things. So I thought, wow, I'd love to go. So in Australia, the end of the year is summer, and that's when we get our long holidays. So Australia pretty much shuts down in now it's mainly just January, but again, we're talking like 40 years ago, 45 years ago or more. So that was 1977. So so we used to finish school like in early December, especially seniors, and then you'd be off virtually all until the end of January, right? So I had virtually 2 months before I started teachers college. Now I had to enroll in teachers college. And the enrollment process obviously starts earlier, where you put in your preferences, and then according to your marks and stuff, you'll get an offer. Anyway, long story short, I wasn't going to be here for the offers. So a friend of mine was already in one of the teachers colleges that I had applied for, and I got an offer. So I said to him, no, I'm not going to be here. Can you go and enroll me? So he enrolled me while I was away having a good time, came back, did my teaching course, and I'd never failed anything in my life, Payman, but I failed a teaching round in my second year. It was a three-year training. We started in Australia those days, we started doing teaching rounds from year one. So even though you're fresh out of school, you go and do a teaching round just for a week, every term or whatever. Just for one day, every week. And then 3 or 4 times during the year, you'd have a week in the classroom with the teacher. And you're doing little things like, helping the kids to read or tie their shoelaces or whatever, however old they were. So anyway, I'd been doing the teaching rounds, as we call it, for 18 months. My second teaching round, I failed. And why that happened is they put me in with the vice principal, and this is in the primary and elementary school. And in the vice principal's class, he had all the troublesome kids, right? All the problem kids. And so he left because I was now second year. So he left me at one point to go and do some vice principal stuff, which he shouldn't have. And the kids were all playing up. And they used to play up all the time. And I didn't really know. I didn't have what we call control, which is not a good word, but it was called control. What's your control like in the classroom? So my control was terrible with these kids, to the point that I failed my teaching round. I was so full of shame because I'd never failed anything in my life. Remember me telling you that in India, if you failed twice, you'd get expelled because failing was really shameful. So I'd never failed anything in my life. So that was kind of quite horrible. So that was the biggest road bump I had. Then when I finished school, I finished it, and I thought, will I give up teaching or will I continue? I decided to continue because I thought, 18 months, I've got nothing to show for it. May as well continue. At least I'll have a piece of paper. So I did that. Couldn't find a job anywhere. And then again, my aunt, who's, again, she's also passed, God rest her soul. So she did a novena. I don't know if you know anything about Catholics. They do this 9-day thing called a novena. And then you expect like a miracle. So I had a miracle job land in my lap. Mind you, I did go to the recruitment center for the Air Force because they didn't have any elementary school jobs at the time. And I landed the job relatively easily. I worked in that job for 4.5 years. And then my contract finished. And just by chance, someone I'd met on the base, I was happy to say to him how my time had finished. And he actually managed to get me another job in a school. So I've had jobs just land in my lap, right? And then with the job that I ended up with the Department of Defense, I did an exam and I managed to get that job. And then I came to Canberra because we were in Melbourne at the time, came to Canberra, transferred my scores, and again, I got a job. So jobs have just landed in my lap, right? Once I was in the Department of Defense, I moved around in various jobs. because you get sort of tenure, which is awesome, but you can do variety of positions in that time. So I had lots of jobs in that time, and I learned a lot of things along the way. And I was always very lucky that I always had someone who was kind of like a mentor or someone I could rely on to kind of help me navigate the bureaucracy of the public service. So, I've been very lucky in terms of my my employment, that it's been a pretty smooth road, a few little kind of turns, but no big no roller coaster.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's amazing. Now, let's talk about a roller coaster now. So you said in 2013, your life completely came down, everything collapsed. First, you had to switch position in your job, go to another department, and then your mother passed away, you lost your marriage, and then you had a stroke. So talk us through all of that.
Sure. Well, the chronology is a little different. So my mum passed away in January.
Okay.
My husband and my kids and I were on holiday, and we were in India with my sister and her family as well. Anyway, so mum died when we were there. We still stayed there because we both wanted our kids to kind of see our heritage. And my mum was a very practical kind of woman. She'd always say, treat me well when I'm alive, don't cry at my graveside. So, it was no problem kind of, because we knew that she was very practical. She would have wanted us to stay there. So we came back here in time for the funeral. And as much as my mum was a huge presence in my life, and she still is, because she was such a wise woman, there was never any guilt with her. Because she'd say, treat me well when I'm alive, don't cry at my graveside. And I knew that I wasn't the best daughter in the world, but I was the best daughter I could be. And we both always just told each other how we felt, like, I really love you, Mum. You're really this to me, or, my girl, this, that, or the other, she'd say to me, I'm so proud of you. So I was so blessed to have that relationship with my mum. So even though I felt her absence in a big way, she was always just here anyway. And she was always here. And I still used to talk about her in Canberra, and I still do. And people say to me, oh my gosh, your mum is such a wise woman. You're so lucky to have her in your life. And I do believe that. So she died. And then in the meantime, I was having some little episodes. So I'd kind of like blink and I'd feel like, or something would happen and I didn't know what happened. Doesn't make sense. But it was kind of like things would happen in the blink of an eye and I wouldn't necessarily realize. It was only later on when I was in the shower one time and I went to wash my hair, but my hair was already wet and I didn't realize. Then I knew that something was happening. In the meantime, I remember, getting up feeling like my left side was all kind of really numb and cramped. And I remember talking to my husband at the time, and he said, oh, yeah, that happens when you're just lying on one side for too long. I happened to mention it to a man I worked with, and he was all across, health and all that sort of stuff. He said the same thing. Anyway, I then ended up making some appointments with my GP, and my GP sent me for tests. Anyway, again, long story short, woke up in the middle of the night one night, couldn't stand up to go to the ensuite. My husband had to take me there.
Wow.
Went to the hospital. They did some tests and stuff. And anyway, again, fast forward, turned out that I was diagnosed wrongly. When I went and saw my doctor and he was exploring all of this, he said, well, what's happening in your life? And what was happening in my life was I had a really horrible boss. He was a new boss. He was a really toxic man and he created a really toxic environment. And I very sort of, upfront, happy to sort of put my case forward. You'll never die wondering what I think because I'll always tell you. I always have an opinion, even if it's uninformed, I say. And I was reluctant to say anything to him because I didn't trust him. He'd only been there 6 months and he'd created chaos up and down the floor because he also worked in another area before he came and worked for us. Whereas prior to that, the boss I had, she was awesome. We got on really well. I was her 2IC. So when she was away, I'd fill in for her. And she always said to me, Alyson, when I retire, you should get my job. I always said, Barb, I don't think I want your job. I don't think I'm as good as you are. She said, oh, yeah, you'll be fine. Anyway, what happened is that she did leave, but the man who filled her place was the friend of her boss, right? So my boss's boss brought in his friend. Now, funnily enough, the boss's boss still had a really good opinion of me because he and I had worked directly for a few things. But anyway, Sorry, I'm a detail person, so I take too long, I know. Anyway, again, so because I was in this really toxic environment, the doctor said, you cannot go and work for that man, which meant I now had to change jobs. I still had employment because I was in the government, thankfully. So the money was still coming in, but I was off work for 3 months. And I didn't actually tell anybody, in my work circle, because it was kind of, I don't know. I guess I wasn't really that fit. I worked with a whole bunch of men that I didn't kind of live close to or wasn't socially close to. But anyway, so this was all kind of happening in the background. And while all this was happening, they were trying to work out what my diagnosis was, and they couldn't work it out. They took out the big ticket items like brain tumor, multiple sclerosis, all that sort of stuff, but they had no idea. So they sent me finally to a neurologist who was a quack. And he misdiagnosed me because I was having headaches. He said that my sister has migraine, so it must be migraine. Because I had lost mobility on my left side, and I still every now and again my whole left arm wouldn't work. Try going to the toilet when one hand doesn't work and pulling up your pants. Not easy. So too much information. But so, I couldn't drive a car as well. Like luckily we had automatic cars, but even just to move, my neck as well was an issue. So even just to move was a problem. So I needed to get a car that had a camera in it. Luckily, we had technology for that. So there were lots of things that were changing in my life, right? I was really scared because I didn't know what my diagnosis was. In the middle of all this, my husband of 25 years says, I want a divorce. Now, the marriage hadn't been good for a long time. I knew that. But I always thought we'd find our way back to each other, when the kids had moved home. He was having pressures at work and I was having pressures at work. And I thought, this is just part and parcel of what this is. But no, he wanted a divorce. So that was scary. I was 53 years old.
Yeah.
We talked about our retirement. One of my fears I said to you before was, being out on the street, being evicted. We had no debts, etc. Suddenly I was going to be this 53-year-old woman with 2 teenage kids. I mean, they were grown up, but still, and how was I going to cope? And my family was all in Melbourne. I was in Canberra. And the other thing is my son was away on what we call a gap year. So in Australia, kids usually go after, a gap year. Okay. So he was away for a year. My daughter was by herself. We lived out of town, so she didn't have any friends close by. She was quite isolated. All the family was in Melbourne. Her beloved grandmother had died. Her brother, whom she loved, but they used to fight, was away. So she was quite isolated. So we didn't tell her that we were going to separate and divorce because that would have been quite devastating for her. So because we didn't tell her, we didn't tell anybody in the family. Because she's the youngest child, they're all very protective of her. We didn't want anybody, either of her cousins or her aunts and uncles, saying, how are you going? Are you okay? So virtually I was facing all of this by myself. So I felt really isolated. I felt isolated from work, isolated from my family, isolated from my husband now that he wanted a divorce. To his credit, he was very supportive emotionally. And given that he wanted out of the marriage, I was to say to him, you're quite heroic in the way you're supporting me. I really appreciate that. So there was a lot of stuff happening. And then again, I then changed who I was. I went from being confident and outgoing to submissive and anxious. Because part of what I had, they found that I had a narrow carotid artery, and I always had sort of sense. I still have to now, I can feel that to you at the moment. I have sensations running up and down my arm. Now we live kind of 50 minutes away from the nearest hospital, and I had these overactive imagination that, what happens if I have a brain aneurysm? I'm not going to get, the ambulance is not going to get you in time, never mind take me back in time. So that was also what fed my anxiety. And because I didn't know anything about physiology and I had these sensations, I didn't know if I was going to have an aneurysm, but this sensation I've got is actually an aneurysm or not. So there was a whole lot of fear, a whole lot of anxiety, a whole lot of stress, and no support.
Yeah.
So horrible.
Wow. Must have been incredible. So when you were going through all of that, like your life literally crumbling down, collapsing in front of your eyes in a matter of 6 months, everything that you knew that provided you with the stability, the safety net, and all that gone pretty much overnight on 6 months. There's a saying that says, change your story, change your life. Meaning, so how did you, Alyson, change your story internally to change your life externally while you're going to all this turmoil to get to yourself, to keep your sanity, first of all, and second of all, to get out of that hole and to keep moving forward?
See, payment, I don't know. And I tend not to go back there very often. I think because I had the kids, especially my daughter, who is very close to me, and very vulnerable. She was 16. She also, her relationship with her father hasn't always been great. And I don't know why. I mean, obviously he loved her. There was no issue there, but there was always a bit of friction in their relationship. He did favor my son over her, no two ways about it.
Oh, wow.
I don't think he saw that, and I don't think he realized, but he did. And she really felt that. So I just knew that for her, because I used to I've never really cried much for myself. I'll cry watching a movie, I'll cry going to the funeral of someone I don't know, but for myself, I didn't really cry. But I was crying all the freaking time. I'd be in the car with my daughter, and I'd be crying tears and stuff. So I'd make sure I had on my sunglasses so she couldn't see. I'd be in a meeting at work and I'd be crying, right? So I was in this hot mess of emotions all the time. And hormones have never really played a big part in my life, thankfully. So even though I was 53, I wasn't really hormonal to that extent. But there was just all this churning of emotion within me. And I think it was virtually just my daughter that kept me on the straight path. Because don't forget, she didn't know what was happening, right? Ironically, that period of time before I moved out was just the best time for a long time that my husband and I had been in terms of a relationship. So we were civil to each other. We were friends. We actually started off as colleagues and friends. That's how we met. So we kind of moved back into that relationship, and it was still very cooperative. He'd cook dinner for both of us and for my daughter as well. And so we were still doing things for each other. So we were living more like friends. So that was some kind of stability, if you like. And it was providing her with stability. So I just had to manage myself. And I was able to manage myself because I didn't want to let her down.
Sure.
But part of the parcel also is my mother had instilled in me. I was lucky, as I said, to have that childhood with parents who loved me and gave me a sense of self, a self-esteem, of self-importance. And I don't mean self-importance like big-headed, but importance like I matter. I was really lucky to have that. And I did grow up Catholic, and I don't know if I was going to church. That I don't go to church regularly anymore anyway, but I still feel very connected to God. My mother, again, God bless her, made me realize that she was very religious, but she was really anti-church. So for me, religion is between me and God.
Absolutely.
The church is it's just men mainly, some women, and buildings. Got nothing to do with religion. So I still had that faith. And so I think that's really what sort of led me through all of this. My daughter and, the kind of strengthen myself, which is why I think self-love is so important. And then having a spiritual belief, because if I can't change things, I'm praying to God. If I can't work that, God, you fix it, please.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. One thing that I learned, and that has been everybody, the over 400 amazing people I've talked to on my podcast, people that gone through incredibly painful, challenging things like losing it all, going to jail, people overcoming, surviving rather, terminal diseases, people overcoming life-altering accident, becoming paraplegic, handicapped. They all unanimously told me the same thing, that their challenge, their what they went through, yes, it was horrible, but at the same time was the greatest thing that ever happened to them. And when I hear someone say about going to jail or cancer or becoming paraplegic and telling you this was the greatest gift, you wonder, your logical mind says, what the hell are these guys talking about? Are they crazy? But when you look deep down, you say, wow, life is a school. We come here to learn, grow, become better and wiser. But then all of the crap that you went through, that becomes your story. Then your story becomes your gifts. And then your gifts become your duty and responsibility. One of my ultimate realization in this life, at least from my humble understanding, is that, yes, for us to become better ourselves, that's only 5% of what we are here for. The 95% is taking those gifts, sharing them with others so we can all collectively benefit and rise from them. So when you, Alison, look at your life, especially that very painful and dark chapter of your life in 2013, now with the eye of maturity, enlightenment, when you look at it, the two questions that saved my life when it was my lowest was have been, what is this trying to teach me? What is the lesson for me to learn? So when you look back in that very dark chapter of your life, what was that trying to, first of all, would you agree that, well, let me say it first this way. What was the what was that trying to teach you, and what was the lesson for you to learn by life literally throwing all of that at you at once?
Well, as I said, I keep saying, and I've said this again in one of the other meetings I had this morning, someone I'd met for the first time. I was so blessed to have a really happy childhood, a really happy upbringing, that, money was never a problem. Mum and dad, they didn't have the best marriage, but he didn't beat her or anything like that. So he wasn't alcoholic or any of that kind of stuff that other kids had had. So I just took I took it for granted that, that was me, and I was lucky, and everybody had that kind of stuff. Even though part of me knew that everybody didn't have that, it kind of made me less sensitive, I think, to other people's challenges they were going through. And having come through and I know that what I've been through is nothing compared with other people, but we're not here to compare you and me. We're here to compare me and me, right? So I realized that what happened to me, and as I say, with my divorce is the worst thing that happened in my life. I wouldn't change what happened. I would just change how it happened. And I don't really want to get into that because that is about my ex-husband, not me. But how it happened was really quite horrible. There was a sense of betrayal and a lot of grief and a lot of loss, etc. But the fact that it happened made me a better person. It's made me more compassionate. It's made me realize forgiveness. And if I can just take a minute to talk about forgiveness. So
Please.
I came to forgiveness through my daughter. So I was saying before that she and her father didn't have the best of relationships, right? But because I'd had a great relationship with both my parents, I wanted that for my children. The man I married had had a previous relationship, a previous marriage. He'd been married before, and his two kids from his first marriage were really turned against him by his first wife. And I always said I would never hate anybody more than I loved my children.
Yeah.
Yes, her children were much younger when they divorced, but she was so angry and so whatever that she used to lie to the kids about their father. And to his credit, he never said anything against her, but he's just not like that. But we dealt with the fallout. And I always said I would never lie to anyone. Oh, so I would never hate anyone more than I love my children. So for my children, I wanted the relationship I had with my parents. So when my daughter was, and look, I'm quite happy to call a spade a spade. I'm not going to, gloss over anything because that's just disrespectful. So my daughter said, Dad, this, that, and the other. And he did favor her. And I told her, I agreed. And then I told my husband, this is how you've been, and you need to fix it. Even after we were divorced, he was listening to me about that because I guess he cared for his daughter too. But when she was going through all this anger with him, I'd say, look, Katie, he did the best he could. I think all parents do the best they can with what they have. I said, so while he wasn't this and that and the other, why don't we look at what he was? He was always there for us, for you. We had a home, lovely homes. We had a roof over our head. We always had money. We went on holidays. He cooked for the family. I did too. He'd iron the kids' clothes. He'd make their lunches. So he did all those kind of dad things that a lot of other dads didn't do. I said, this is who he was. So in telling her about everything that he was, I realized everything that he was for me. I do know that he loved me deeply. I do know that, he allowed me, gave me a lot of freedom to do things I wanted. He was very good to my parents and my family. So I started looking at all the things he was. And then I realized all the things that I wasn't. And I realized, you know what? I was actually a pretty crappy wife. I was a great mom, but I was a really bad wife. But anyway, through realizing everything that he was, I came to understand that I now forgive him because you know what? I wasn't everything that I could be, and I so appreciate everything that he was. And through telling her about gratitude, I came to forgiveness. And then finally, I've been able to forgive myself too.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
No, that is a bit.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that, and especially sharing the gifts, the lessons. So now that you've seen the gifts, how are you now sharing those gifts around you and around the world to make the world a better segue? And that's a perfect segue into talking about your impact to your business. So let's start with that.
So, as I said, I'm the person who always has an opinion because my mum was also like that, quite
Mm-hmm.
happy to sort of say, hey, try this. I like to help people as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, this is how I was brought up, to contribute, to help the world be a better place. So if I can help someone in any way to say, hey, your shoelace is broken here, I've got a spare one, or I'll drive you to the cobbler or whatever.
Yeah.
So if I've got some knowledge, because knowledge by itself is useless, it's
Mm.
only worthwhile if it's shared. So if I've got something that I think can help you, I'm happy to help you. If I've got access to something I think I can help you, I will do that. So I know that you've got a challenge coming up. I've been telling everybody I think could benefit from it. Okay, this challenge is coming up. Go and do it. If it's your thing, do it. If it's not your thing, that's fine. I've done my bit by sharing it,
Thank
right?
you. Yeah.
So for me, if I have got something to share, it might be information, it might be a link, it might be a ticket, or it might be my knowledge, it might be my skills, it might be my gifts. I'm also lucky that having had the experience of my upbringing and knowing that other people don't, I'm able to bring those sort of aspects for people. So people who haven't been mothered, if you like, and I use that in inverted commas, who haven't had a loving maternal presence in their life, I have been that for them. Not in a patronizing way, not in a way like, oh, you poor thing, you need to be looked after, but seeing that this is something that they need. And my coaching skills, my coaching training has very much helped with that. And my mother's wisdom has also really helped me with that. So putting both of those together, and obviously life experience, I'm able to help people on their path. Now, it doesn't have to be somebody who signs up with me to be a client. I do a lot of pro bono stuff. I did the other day, or this morning, I did a complimentary, bling session with someone who has the money to afford it. I met a woman last week at networking, and she was interested in past life hypnotherapy. So I did a free session with her. So it's not about money. If I can help you to move forward in your life, that's what I want to do. But because also, and I'm not a proponent of this. If you give me something free, I will treasure it much more than if I pay for it. My thinking is if I've paid for it, it's mine. I can put it on the ground and I can smash it. It's mine, right? But if you've given it to me, that's a gift I have to honor.
Mm.
I know a lot of people are not like that. They say if it's free, it doesn't mean it's not worth anything. But if I've paid for it, well, that's my money, so I need to look after it, right?
Yeah.
So I know that there are some people who don't value anything unless they do pay for it.
Mm.
And even though that's not my value system, I do know I also have to pay for the lights and pay for the roof over my head and pay for the food on the table. And my coaching has cost me tens of thousands of dollars. So I need to also pay for that back as well. So I realize that I do have skills, and a lot of life is about transaction. It's not only about transaction, but we do give and get. It's like two hands, one to give and one to take, right?
Mhm.
So I do realize that I have skills and I have abilities and I have um, modalities that people can benefit from. And there's some people who are not comfortable asking for anything that's free. And I can be a little bit like that. Whereas if I know that if I can ask to pay for coaching and it's going to cost me some money, I'm more likely to say, hey, payment, can you coach me? I want to be part of your coaching program. I'm not going to say, hey, payment, can you coach me free? Right. So that's why I know that it is important to have something that people can opt into, that people can buy.
Sure.
So that's why I do what I do. And as a teacher, I love to teach, but I also love to learn. As a teacher, I love to make sure that what I'm teaching has some really sound methodology behind it.
Mhm.
Because when you're working with people's minds and people's hearts and people's lives, you can't just do a weekend thing for $5 and say, oh, yes, I'm now a coach. And coaching is unregulated around the world, sadly.
I know.
And integrity is probably, my highest
Huge.
integrity. Yeah. So, I will not take any money for something that I don't feel I can deliver. If you want coaching, I'm not a business coach, right? I can show you a business in some way, but I cannot tell you the nuts and bolts of how to run a successful business. I can do strategy, I can do mindset. But otherwise, if you want to know how to run a successful business, say, hey, Payman, I'm not your girl. Go and see this person. They're amazing. Right? So I know that in terms of what I've got is valuable, and it's definitely, worth people paying their money for it, because they will get value over and above.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. One of the things that my parents, God bless their soul, always emphasize, especially my father, is that know your limits. If you don't know the answer, it's okay to say no. Sorry,
Exactly.
I don't know the answer. A lot of people just let their ego come into the way. Oh, I can't say no. Of course I do,
Yeah.
even if you have no
Yeah.
clue. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. So yes. Now, I love your title, The Self-Love Alchemist. Tell us about that.
So alchemy, as you know, if you've read the Paul Coelho's The Alchemist, it's about turning lead into gold. And
Yeah.
as my friend says, I would turn your old BS, your belief system, into your new uplifted belief system. So turn your leaden belief system into a golden belief system. So that's the alchemy bit, working from the inside out sort of stuff, right? Self-love is, as I said, I was very lucky. That was my childhood experience. Or even though my mum was a huge pillar in my life, she was always the disciplinarian. I was daddy's girl, so daddy used to spoil me, and mum was the person I was scared of. But
Mm.
I knew in my life there were two people who loved me no matter what. One was my daddy, and one was his sister, my auntie Girlie. Her name
Ah,
was Gertrude. We call her Girlie. So I knew no matter what was going wrong in my life, I failed a Bengali test, even if I got expelled from school, my daddy and my auntie Girlie loved me, right? So those were things that were absolute pillars in who I am and who I was. And as I got older, I knew that my mum loved me too. And I knew my mum respected me, which was more important. So for me, that whole self-love thing is because I've had that's been my superpower for me, right? I've been able to move through anything because that's been who I am at my core. I want to help people to get that themselves,
mm,
because I say it's empowerment through self-love. When you feel good about yourself, you will say, hey, I feel good about myself, so I want other people to feel good too. I'm not going to say mean things to you because I don't want you to feel mean about yourself. I want you to feel good about yourself the way I feel about myself, right? That's how I show up. Because I feel good about myself, I'm not going to let you disrespect me. So that's where I think the self-love is so important, to live life on your terms. So that's why self-love and alchemy to me just go together.
I love that. I love that. A, a couple of minutes ago, it's something that is very aligned with one of my favorite saying, and that is what you said, release your BS to rewrite a new belief system. I have something similar that I always say, and I say, your crap is your gold. Because everything
Nice.
happens to you doesn't happen to you, but for you. Just like I said
Yeah.
earlier, all the crap that we go through, that becomes your story, then they become your gift, then your gift your duty and responsibility.
Yeah.
So and as I said, whatever we are here to share our gifts, and the gifts are all the lessons, wisdoms we learned so far in this life with others. We can all collectively rise. So I love that. So why do you think is it that we have a hard time, or rather struggle the most about self-love? We all, for example, for me, and I'm sure you can relate with that, and many people, I'm always the first person to go and help someone and really do something for them, or shower them with praises and stuff. But when it comes to me, we can be our worst judge. We can be very strict and very difficult with ourselves. And why do you think that is?
Well, oh my God, we can spend a whole hour talking about that.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. Yeah.
So my beliefs based on all of the training that I've had
Mhm.
is that going back to like the dawn of time virtually, and I'm not talking about creationism or
Mhm.
Darwinism, or whatever, but when we were living in tribes in the caveman days, we needed the tribe to be together, to band together for our survival, right? So the tribe looked after each other with food. We'd go hunting, gathering. One person by themselves can't necessarily kill a big mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger, but a group can. We needed to have, we needed to huddle together for warmth because that kept us sort of alive as well. We also needed to have, if there were other tribes, warring tribes, we needed to band together for protection from that way. So in caveman days, we needed the tribe to be safe and to survive, right? And if we were shunned from the tribe, then we would die. So it was important to be accepted. It was important to be valued. It was important to belong. And those are our three greatest fears, or our three greatest fears: not being enough, not being lovable, and not belonging. And that's where we can feel rejected if we don't feel that we are lovable or we're not enough. If we are shunned and abandoned, we can feel that we don't belong. And even though we're not fighting saber-tooth tigers or warring tribes or anything like that anymore, it's still within our DNA in terms of how we process the world. So now the stress becomes, my boss or my colleague or my spouse even, or the traffic or whatever it might be. And it all becomes this kind of negative stuff that's in our head all the time. But what is it that actually makes us feel bad about ourselves quite often? So the way our brains have developed, the amygdala, which is the oldest part of the brain, our reptilian brain, as we call it, it's there for our survival. That's our fight and flight kind of response. So soon, and we actually, that's why we kind of like, as mammals, we have hair on our bodies, and that hair will stand up and you can feel some kind of danger. It also happens for excitement, funnily enough. So that as a coach, you can change kind of fear into excitement, but that's another story. But anyway, so our amygdala is there to protect us. So we're looking constantly for fight or flight. Do we need to run away to survive as well? And again, that comes down to, how we've been developed, and that's still within us. Now, when you put those together, so you've got the, needing to be loved and accepted and belonging, and the fear kind of thing, those go together, and they can sometimes fire together. And that can get us in this state of, I don't feel good enough. That makes me fearful. That makes me want to run away. Right? Now, if you take into account Maurice Massey's work, now he was a psychologist in the 20th century, and he said that humans develop like they're like 7-year cycles. So in our first year is our imprint period. That's when from birth to 7. Now, in that time, we are mainly exposed to our parents, and anything we hear, we take as gospel. We were talking about hypnotherapy, and your critical faculty, which is what hypnotherapy has to bypass, that only comes in when we're age 7 or thereabouts. So up until 7, we don't have any barrier, any filter that says this is rubbish, this is not rubbish, which is why years ago when Superman came out on television, a lot of kids were having accidents because they were trying to fly. And then they'd fall off the roof and break their legs or whatever, right? Because the critical faculty hasn't come in. Once the critical faculty comes in, then we can say, no, this is just rubbish. But in that period, when people say to you, oh my God, Payman, you've made such a mess. You're such a dirty boy. You're such a bad boy. You become this bad boy person. And you take on the bad boy. And the more you've got people saying you're a bad boy, you're now a bad boy. And something happens outside of you that you're just nearby and you think maybe it's me because I'm a bad boy. That probably happened. Which is why a lot of kids think that your mum and dad are divorcing because it's their fault, because they've been naughty or whatever. So that's the first part. The second 7 years is we go to school, and then there are other people at school who have an impact and influence on us. It might be our peers who say, oh my God, you're so fat, lose some weight. Oh my God, your breath smells, or look at you, you're so ugly, or whatever it might be. Or a teacher says, you're stupid, you're going to amount to nothing. All that kind of stuff we take on as well. And even though our critical faculty is still there, we still have that insecurity because we still want to be loved. We still want to feel enough. We still need to belong. And especially if we haven't had those in those foundational years, then nobody's ever told us, you're beautiful. I love you. It doesn't matter what you look like. You're still beautiful. And that's why I feel that has been my superpower for me, because I had all that, right? So even at school, if anybody ever told me anything, I said, drop dead. I really don't care what you think. My daddy and my auntie Billy love me. That's all that matters, kind of stuff, right? Exactly. So this is why we haven't had that. We then take on other people's beliefs. Then we get to the next stage, and then we're looking at, the media. And now with kids with social media, there's so much hate stuff. We're now into, body image. Everybody wants to be, maybe not now Barbie, but Barbie's actually as old as I am. She's an older. Everybody wanted to be this super skinny, supermodel kind of person, or a stick insect, right? And if not, people used to, say stuff about you, which is why we had things like anorexia, what have you. So there are all these external influences that social media or society says you have to be like this, that, or the other. And if you're not, you then, put rubbish on yourself. So for all of these external influences, we then take it on as being who we are. And in fact, we're not. We are all born beautiful. We are all born whole. And it just depends on what sort of environment we've been in to make us feel that we are magnificent or not. And so undoing all that crap can take some time, but it's doable. And that's why I really love to help people to get there.
Love that, love that. Tell us more about your business. What is it, one pain point you're solving, and for who?
Well, when I finished coaching, I wanted to save the world, just to help everybody live a great life and feel good about themselves. And then I realized, no, that doesn't work. Took me a while to get there. So I then realized, you know what? I'm over 40. I can help women who are over 40 who've been through some of the stuff that I've been through to get through that. And because all my life I've had imposter syndrome in the workplace because of one reason or another. So yeah, while I've had a great sort of home life, I'm not bulletproof. So I've also felt some insecurities along the way in the workplace and what have you. So I know what it's like to feel imposter syndrome. So I decided I'd want to actually work with professional women, corporate or business, who have imposter syndrome. And I've kind of niched really down onto that. But having said that, I have coached men. I've coached other women who are not looking, who don't have imposter syndrome, who have some other stuff they want to work on. Now with hypnotherapy, I can do one session where we're looking at your goals or past life regression, or we can do something that goes like a smoking or any of that kind of stuff that might take more than one session. So depending on what it is, I have all sorts of modalities that I can help clients to get the desired result. And one thing I didn't say that, was part of the previous question is we say such bad things to ourselves because of all that baggage that we've had. And the first thing I actually say to my clients, or even if I'm, even in a session where I'm being interviewed or whatever, that the one way you can start today to change your relationship with yourself is to watch your language, right? Stop saying, I'm an idiot. That was me. I'd make a mistake and go, oh God, I'm an idiot. No, I'm not an idiot. I made a mistake, right? Another thing is get rid of those shame and blame and guilt words. Don't say I should or I must. I really must, vacuum my house. Well, yes, I must vacuum my house because it needs a vacuum, but really I choose to vacuum my house because I don't want to live in a dirty house. I really want to have an environment that's nice and healthy where I can enjoy the surroundings. So choosing our words and being conscious of the words we speak to ourselves, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. You can start today, right now.
Yes,
As soon as you start your awareness, then you realize.
I completely agree with that because words are incredibly powerful, especially the words you tell yourself. Because again, what you think, you speak. What you speak, you manifest. Words like, for example, you mentioned, I'm an idiot. I'm a no good. I'm useless. I'm lazy. I can't afford it. That's a big one. I don't have the money because guess what? If you have those thoughts in your mind, that's how everything you're gonna attract more of those experiences. I had to unlearn that myself because me as well growing up, I went through a lot of that and imposter syndrome, very very low, if not negative self-confidence, and I had to deprogram myself. Start listening to not just affirmations, but ask affirmations. Have you heard of ask affirmations?
Yeah.
Like ask yourself, why I'm so lucky? Why is money coming to me from every direction and known and unknown sources and increasing quantities? Why all these beautiful ladies smiling at me, for example? Why all the amazing clients coming to me? Things like this. Why am I a money
Yeah.
magnet? Why am I a miracle magnet? You reprogram your
Yeah.
mind instead of asking why I'm such a fool or such a clown, whatever. Say the opposite. Affirmation have been an absolute game changer, life changer for me.
I just want to say thank you because my brother mentioned that to me. Well, luckily, I have three brothers. One of my brothers is very much into all this personal development and manifesting, call it what you like, right? And every time we get on the phone, it's like an hour and a half. So I often don't ring because I don't actually have an hour and a half to talk to him. Anyway, so, when we get together as well in person, we have these long, deep and meaningful conversations. And just recently told me about affirmations, and I'd forgotten that. So thank you for bringing it back to my memory
You're very welcome.
on my
That's one thing. Another thing, also speaking from my personal experience, have been gratitudes. Starting your day and ending your day and throughout the day to counting your gratitude, no matter how small they may be. Thank you for the roof of my head. Thank you for the comfortable bed. Thank you for the beautiful apartment I'm living in. Thank you for all amazing friendship, the opportunities, the blessings in my life, the supporting family, friends, the money coming my way, the opportunities on my way, in front of me. Even something as simple as thank you for my health. That should be even the first one. Thank you for every part, every cell, every tissue, every bone, every fiber, every organ of my body to be perfectly performing, perfectly healthy, to be self-healing, self-regenerating, self-rejuvenating every day. That's one of my mantra. I take long showers because I have a big connection with water. When I'm in the water, I count my blessings. So far, I've been struggling with meditation to quiet my mind because my mind doesn't stop. But water is what gives me that calmness. Like, for example, the picture behind me, that's the swimming pool of the place. I spent 6 months in 2023 in Malaysia. I used to just stand by the edge and just look at the tower and the view and say, universe, inspire me, or even better, swim under the water or go under the water, holding my breath and saying, universe, inspire me. Here, I don't have a swimming pool here, but there's a beach. I go on the beach, just sit by the ocean, listening to the waves, or even sometimes dive in the water. And before I dive, I say, universe, inspire me, show me the path. Counting my
Beautiful.
blessings. When I go to places on the way, I count my blessings. Gratitude, because if you can be grateful for the small things, guess what? You're going to attract more. And when you're in a state of gratitude, you cannot be pissed off. You cannot be sad. You cannot be depressed.
Exactly.
So that's
Beautiful. I
been a
love
game
that.
changer for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that too. And Canberra is nowhere near as cold as Canada, which is your home country,
Yeah.
but is much colder than many other places in Australia. And like sadly, a lot of places around the world, we have a homeless problem. And
Mm.
I know, and I'm pretty sure quite a few people die over the winter, those who are homeless. Um, and every morning, it started in winter, but I say it now every morning. Thank you, God, for my warm bed. Thank you for my home. Thank you for the roof over my head. Exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
also thank God for the money that I get every fortnight because luckily we're paid every 2 weeks in Australia. So, one of the coaches whose programs that it used to say, every time you get a bill, write thank you on it. Because, thank you for the services, for the utilities I've received for this bill. Thank
Yeah.
you that I've got the money to pay for it. So, if I didn't have lights, I wouldn't have to pay for the lights. One of the things I love paying taxes. You know why? Because if I'm paying tax, it means I've earned money. And if I'm paying tax, it means that the government has money to build a school, to build
Yeah.
a hospital, to build the roads. I love paying taxes. So I really get annoyed with people who grumble about tax. They want the government to give them everything, but where's the government going to get it from?
That's a great way of looking at taxes, actually. That's a great way. That's a beautiful way. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really because even when you're at your lowest, you only have, let's say, $5 in your wallet. If you can be grateful for those $5, then guess what? You're gonna open the doors, the gates to receiving more. And I've lived that. I've experienced that.
Absolutely. The other thing too, and don't get me wrong, I certainly, believe in that as well. But the other thing is if you're saying I've only got $5, your whole
Yes.
demeanor becomes negative and
Lack.
lacking.
Yes.
You say, oh well, I've got $5. What can I only have $5, even if you want to say, what can I do to make the best of the $5? Well, guess what? I'm not just going to buy, a magazine that's not a magazine might keep me occupied, cost more than $5 for a magazine these days. but I'm going to choose my to spend my $5 wisely. So that way it's a gift. The $5 is a gift rather than, a lack. I was actually talking to someone this morning and saying it's all about the meaning you give it. So this is my phone.
Yeah.
So this can either be a very good paperweight because I can put it on a whole stack of papers and they won't fly away, or it can be the most amazing business machine, personal machine. I can communicate with the world. I can do my banking. I can do my emailing. I can watch a movie. This is amazing. I can choose to see it as just a paperweight, has no value other than holding papers, or I can see it as a way to open up the world.
To create magic, to make money, to inspire others, to bless others.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's how you look at things. Absolutely. Completely. You mentioned, oh, I only have $5. That's the wrong way to look at things. Just like you said, money is energy. Money is frequency. Just like, in the old radios that you had to tie in to say
Yeah.
93.5 FM to listen to your favorite station music. If you went to 92.3, you would get statistics. You can understand anything. But once you get the right one, that's perfectly clear. Same thing here. Just match your frequency and it's going to be clear. It's going to be wide open highway, straight to the point. Beautiful. Now, speaking of your business, share with us an example of the most remarkable transformation you've seen from one of your clients.
Well, the most remarkable transformation has been one that's been on a long term, and she actually hasn't been a one-on-one client. She's been in my group. I run a group with a friend of mine, and one of the women there, we have had one-on-one sessions, but we haven't had, like a concentrated one-on-one kind of program. But in this time, and she is someone who's had a lot of heartache from her mother, particularly. She's borne a lot of guilt through her life, including with her failed marriage. She now has some issues with her relationship with her daughter, with her sister. Not much. Well, she's had issues with her daughter, with her sister, with her mother, and also with her colleagues. And over a period of time, we work in the group, but also I've worked with her one-on-one, but not in a concentrated period. She is now, when I did a one-on-one with her, I did NLP, which is when we do the 5 emotions: anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. Her definition of herself was, I'm a loser. By the time we came to the end of that series, which was only a short series, she came to, I'm a work in progress. That was huge, right? In the space of like 2 sessions, she'd come from I'm a loser to I'm a work in progress. Now, sadly, we stopped the one-on-one there, but she was part of my group. And so over the years with the group, she's now coming to acknowledge herself, that she's seeing the value of herself. She's now seeing the importance of living by her values and having boundaries in place. She's seen the value of communication and how she communicates with her mother, her daughter, her sister, her colleagues. And all these things slowly have taken place over a period of probably about 2 years, right? And slowly, it's kind of like she's been unpeeling the onion herself. And I love the fact that, in a way, that even though we haven't been working one-on-one, it can still work as long as there's work that's done consistently. So I find that is beautiful. In terms of a one-on-one client, the most amazing transformation that I saw was having someone who didn't feel worthwhile as a coach and as a husband. And he amazingly, was able to see his value as a human being. He was able to get back his mojo as a coach. He was able to reconnect. He and his wife were already having a good enough relationship, but I think within himself, I don't think he felt the connection as strong as he wanted to feel it. So we did all that work together, and he got back to being really firing, to the way he wanted it to be.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. let's start wrapping things up. To finish,
Mhm.
I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further, on advices. Ready? What's the best piece of advice you've received so far?
About guilt. My mother told me that you can only be guilty about things that you've done deliberately to hurt someone.
I like that. Can you repeat that again? Because that's really powerful.
That the only reason to be guilty is when you've done something deliberately to hurt another person.
That's quote worthy. Love that. Thank you. What's the worst piece of advice you've received so far?
Um, I don't know because I probably didn't take it, so I didn't listen. Can't think of anything.
Okay, no worries.
Oh, certainly. I think my ex-husband telling me that I was bad with money. That wasn't so much advice, it was me. I mean, and he was right. I mean, I was, but I'm not making that my story.
No, no. Good, good, good. Now, imagine that you're blessed with a time machine and you can go back in time and sit face to face with 18-year-old Alyson. What's the number one piece of advice you would give to her, knowing all that you know now?
I would tell her to be kinder to the world, to
Mhm,
people that she comes across, and to take time to understand them.
mhm,
I would tell her to look after herself physically and not to take for granted her body or her mind.
mhm.
For the most part, I think I've been working on my mind and maybe let the body go a little bit, with being fit. And I would tell her to just look after her money, to
Mm.
learn how to manage money and to start managing, doesn't matter how much she has, but to look after it and be strategic about how to manage it.
Beautiful. Love that. Do you have your own podcast?
I don't.
What's the number one reason you haven't started yours yet?
Well, probably fear on one hand. Um, Secondly, would be because I can't think I don't. A woman I know in Canberra, she has a podcast and she has her husband who's very tech savvy and he does all the editing and all the tech stuff. And so to me, it sort of feels I feel like to have a podcast, I need to have
Mm.
either the tech savvy myself or someone else who is. So that's probably part of it. But I can choose to believe that story or not.
That's
The
it.
other thing is yeah, the other thing is, I think because I kind of feel it's going to be a time commitment, and maybe I won't be able to make that time commitment. I won't be able to keep it, consistently. And reliability is something I pride myself on.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing those. Imagine that today you have your own podcast. It's very successful. And today you're interviewing the most special person in the world, and that is yourself. What is the first question you want to ask yourself?
Good question. So many. I would say, because I know you're going to ask me to answer it, right? So my first question would be, so Alyson, at the end of your life, what do you want people to say about you?
And what's the answer? You're right. You're a smart cookie.
And the answer is that she made a difference when she was here,
Mm,
that, she helped people with her heart as well as, her mind. Um, and she gave everything that she was able to give with
mm.
just the motivation of just giving
Yeah.
with no expectations in return.
Love that. Love that.
I'm gonna cry now.
Crying is therapeutic, actually. It helps. I
I,
used to say, please
I
don't cry, but then I learned that, hey, crying is actually therapeutic,
it is. I said it's cleaning from the inside out.
clearing out the toxins. Yes, absolutely. The emotional toxins, and maybe even the
Yeah.
physical ones.
Yeah.
The last question I ask, and that's my favorite question to ask, and that is, what's the smallest thing you've done that has had the deepest, most profound, positive impact in both your life and your business? For example, for me, it's been starting my podcast. What about you, Alyson?
The smartest thing I've done or the
The
smallest?
smallest, the one thing, the smallest thing.
Um, I think deciding that um I want to be a coach.
Mm.
And then coaching, although I do lots of other things, like I've got, courses on the great discovery. I love teaching. I love doing the courses. I love doing all sorts of things, but really my heart is in coaching, because through coaching, I feel that I can make a difference to people and they can live the life that they want, and they can also impact the people in their lives. I like to sort of think of, being the stone that creates a ripple, but it's the ripples that create other ripples. So that's kind of really how I see my
Yeah,
coaching. So just deciding to be a coach.
I love that. Thank you. Um, if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Well, probably Facebook Messenger is the best way, because then I will see the message pop up. But
Yeah,
otherwise, I do have you. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I'm Alison with the Y. Um, you can email me. You can look at my website. But for the most part, probably a direct line would be either email or Messenger or even LinkedIn.
awesome. We're gonna put all of
Actually,
those on the show notes.
that's my link. That's my link tree there. So
Okay.
all my connections are there.
All right. We'll put all of that in the show notes. Listen, Alison, absolute pleasure getting to know your story. Thank you for unpacking it. Thank you for sharing your story, opening up your heart to me, to my audience. I salute you. You're a true leader with a heart. Keep shining your light, blessing the world, your presence, your impact, your gifts. And always remember that you, Alison, on top of being a smart cookie, you're also a gift. So keep doing that. Stay safe, stay awesome. I was about to say keep warm because I know it's still the cold in Australia. It's the end of the winter.
No, we're coming into winter.
Oh, you're coming to. Oh, okay, okay. But your winter is different than the winter that we have in
Yeah.
Canada.
It
So,
is.
so
Yeah.
stay safe, stay awesome. God bless you, and talk to you very soon. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Pam. And I just like to say, and you are a gift too, right back at you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for this
Thank you
time.
so much. Have a fantabulous day. Take care. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.